So, you know, I always loved cars. So since I was a little kid, I drew cars in my notebook instead of doing my homework. And when everybody else stopped, I kept drawing cars. So eventually my dad said, hey, you should go to a design school. So I applied for a design school called Arts at the Concept of Design. Actually, it was in Switzerland. It was an American school. Took my old rusty Alfa Romeo Alpha suit, drove from Denmark down to Switzerland, became a car designer down there, and never looked back since. So the first one was the BMW Z8 sports car, which was a lot of fun. And then the next one I would say is the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the first one, the DB9, and then of course the Fisker Pear, and now the Fisker Ocean. So my job today is being the CEO and chief designer at Fisker. So I kind of have two jobs, but it's fun and it's good because, you know, it allows me to bring a lot of the emotions into the car, whereas normally if you're the chief designer and somebody else, a CEO, is making the decisions, you lose a lot of the edge. So I think that's why we at Fisker can do more edgy design and really create some features like California mode or the solar roof or the wide stance that most other car companies can't because I make the decisions. Absolutely. A lot of times I end up sketching at night when I'm just about going to bed, coming with some good ideas, or early in the morning with a coffee. But also during the day I spend time on the clay model. We do full-size clay models still, which I love. It's one of the things I enjoy the most is actually working with the clay modelers on the clay model, full-size sculpturing the car. My last idea, actually this was last night, and I was looking at a scale model, and I had an idea for a tail lamp. It was one of our younger designers that are doing an exploratory car. So our design chief in the studio sent me all the different ideas, and I kind of had an idea for a tail lamp. So I just made a quick sketch on my iPad. It's not the best to draw on an iPad. That's more just to give some direction. If I really sketch a car, it really has to be on pen and paper. You know, I think inspiration for me is just generally ideas come to my mind. I get inspired by seeing different cultures, travel. I just had lunch at the here in Paris and saw some beautiful, you know, elements in a hotel, etc. So I think that wherever you go, you get some ideas, you get inspired, and also even driving around in Paris, you see these small cars and you suddenly get inspiration about, hey, maybe we need to do a smaller car. Then you go back to California and you go, I think we need to do a bigger car. So obviously the cultures are very different. So I think it's a matter of kind of understanding what you think could be successful globally. Well, I think now that we're moving into electric cars, I think the trends are probably going to go towards larger cabins internally inside the vehicle because we don't have any more the gas tank to worry about. I think we're going to see shorter front overhangs. So the overhang on the front, basically from where the wheel goes out to the front, is going to get shorter. We have needed this longer overhang in the past because of crash, but now that you don't have a big engine, you have actually more room to create a crash structure. So I think there will be a trend to a shorter hoods, shorter front ends. And then I think nobody's really agreeing on what the trend is. For me, there's a trend right now with a lot of lines on the car that I personally don't like so much because I think after a few years it gets very old and tired. It looks maybe really cool the first 6 months and then you're like, So personally, I prefer very clean body shapes, clean sculpture. Most of all, starting with really good proportions. And proportions is the size of the wheel compared to the body, compared to, you know, the greenhouse, the glass house, and kind of the width compared to the height. So if you can get all these proportions right, I think that's how you have to start a great automobile. So you know, when I designed the Fisker Pear, I wanted something so extreme, so beautiful, so sexy that even though it was environmental friendly, nobody could say, oh, but it looks like an environmental friendly car. It didn't, it looked like the opposite. I think the learnings were we were probably too early out. We were the first to do a vegan interior with reclaimed wood. And I think at that time nobody cared so much about it. I think, you know, we were early out, but the learnings from that is still that if you make something beautiful and that people love, you can easily convince them to do something good. For example, work for a cleaner environment by buying an electric car with, you know, recycled materials, etc. Also, of course, the learning was that it's very tough when you take risk on new technologies. We took a big risk on a new battery company, and it ultimately went bankrupt, so we couldn't continue building the car. So for me, the learnings there is you have to really evaluate the risk that you take. So we produced 2,669, but 300 got lost in a big hurricane in New York, underwater. And so 2,300 is on the road. I got 2 of them. I got one of the probably the last 10 built in a unique Laguna Blue, which I think we only did 69 of. I still drive my Fisker car. So the SUV clearly is the fastest growing segment in the world. Why? Because I think people like the idea of more utility. And we call it sport because it's not quite as tall as a minivan, which nobody really likes. I mean, people buy a minivan only if they really have to. But I think the SUV sort of combines some of the good elements of a car, but with more utility of you know, either a station wagon or even a minivan. So it's a good kind of middle product. And I found that the most important thing for us as we started Fisker Inc. was to create not only a good business model, but also go into a market segment where there was an opportunity. And I didn't see a lot of choice in sort of the 40,000 to 65,000 euro segment with a really good looking, long-range electric SUV that looked like an SUV, not like a hatchback. So that's why we went in with the Fisker Ocean, that segment. I then decided that whenever we do something at Fisker, any car we do, we have to have at least 4 features, which is either best in class or that nobody else has. So for example, we have the longest range of any SUV or crossover for our price, which is in the top version 630 kilometer range. We have 3 features that nobody else has. We have the largest solar roof in the world, which can give you 2,000 to 3,000 free kilometers a year. We have what we call California mode, where actually 8 panels opens up, so the side windows, then the little 3/4 side windows, which we call the doggy windows, and then the rear window, and then the roof opens up with one of the biggest solar roofs, or sunroofs. And then we have inside the vehicle, we actually have a screen on the top model that you push a button and it turns into landscape, from picture to landscape, and you can actually watch a movie while you're charging the car. Now that's just 4 of these unique features. We actually have other things as well. For example, the Fisker Ocean is the world's most sustainable car. We can actually measure that. We have over 50 kilos of basically biodegradable or recycled materials in the vehicle. A lot of the interior are made from recycled plastic bottles from the ocean, etc. So we are the best as far as we can see. We have measured other cars, and the closest we can see are maybe 27 kilos per car, and we are 50. So we are definitely ahead of everybody else when it comes to using recycled materials. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was definitely something where I had this passion for sustainability combined with great design from the Fisker car, and we have taken that, of course, into the Ocean in a much more higher volume vehicle. It's more affordable. Of course, we will be doing a luxury car again, but this time we wanted to start with a high volume vehicle because we wanted to get scale and make sure we can make enough money so we can also make these luxury cars. Because luxury cars, you can't live on just making luxury cars. When you look at some of the luxury car companies or sports car companies, they're either absorbed by big corporations or they aren't doing very well financially. Well, I think that people decide what they would like to have. Of course, if you want to consume very little, you buy a little tiny car, very aerodynamic and very ugly. But you know, that's not necessarily what people want. People decide they want an SUV. So what we did was we designed an SUV to look like an SUV, but we worked a lot on aerodynamics. Of course, it will never be as aerodynamic as a very fastback sedan kind of looking vehicle, but not everybody wants that anymore. So we tried to come up with the best solution for the SUV. We also made it very sculptural around the wheel arches, very wide track to make sure it was super stable. So it actually is very comfortable but drives very sporty because we have a low center of gravity, a wide track, and then we have torque vectoring on the four-wheel drive version. So I just took it to the test track at Bridgestone, and we have a race car driver, Abby Eaton, that helps setting up the car, and she was really impressed by how well the car handles. So the Project Ronin was about redefining what is a sports GT of the future if you go into electric. So for example, I think that I'm not sure it's a good idea just to take a normal mid-engine sports car and use the same proportion for an electric sports car. I actually think the reason we are seeing so many even SUVs from sports car makers is because people like sports cars, but when they finally have to choose a car they drive every day, they take the SUV. So we were thinking, and I was thinking, how can we make a really attractive sports car that you want to drive every day, which means you need more utility. So it seats 4 grown-up people very comfortably. We also decided to get the most emotion into this vehicle because we need emotion. We need this vehicle to feel, when you drive it, a sense of occasion. And of course, part of a sports car today is the noise, and it's maybe the gear shift. That falls away in electric cars. So how else do we create this emotion? So I felt the car has to be an open car. So it's an open car, but you can also close it and make it into a sedan. So it's actually a 4-door. So there's no 4-door cabriolets in the world today, so it'll be the first one. And then finally, we decided that both the exterior and interior design has to be very sexy, very sensual. Like, we have to go really into all the beautiful details with the sculpture, because you should feel when you walk up to this car, wow, I just want to jump in this thing and drive it. So this was kind of from a design point of view what we wanted. From a technical point of view, if it's a sports GT, means that you should be able to drive from Paris to Monaco in the car, which means you need it to be 1,000 kilometers. So that's a lot of, battery we have to put in there. So we decided to actually create a integrated battery pack versus today's cars are all a little bit like Nokia phones. You have a battery pack you put into another structure, whereas of course the Apple iPhone, you have the structure and you put in the battery and you close it. So that's what we're doing with the Ronin, to get more battery capacity inside the vehicle to achieve the 1,000 kilometers. And then of course we're looking at a super powerful powertrain, probably around 1,000 horsepower, 4-wheel drive. Should be super fun to drive. So we are trying to put all these nice ingredients into the Ronin, and then finally also thinking about the noise, not only from the car itself, but what noises you are having when you're in the vehicle. And we actually already doing that with the Fisker Ocean as well. So we built our own sound studio within Fisker, because I think noise is going to be another part, one of your senses that's going to be important as we move into the future. So I'm very excited about the Ronin. We'll probably show it sometime next year, and it'll be a real futuristic super GT sports car. We will definitely have an external speaker. We already had that in the car. I think we're the first to do it. And it's going to be law now because of pedestrians, so you need some sound. But also internally, when you push a button or you make an operation, like for example, when you turn the indicator, we are used to go tick-tock, but now maybe sound something different. So we're doing some new things that are more exciting. So it was a little bit of a coincidence that I was introduced to the chairman of Foxconn, Chairman Young, and we had a Zoom call in the middle of COVID in February last year. And basically he said, I'm looking for something like amazing new, like what Steve Jobs did with the iPhone. What can we do in terms of cars that are really different? I said, I have an idea. It's called the Pear, like Apple Pear. So I said that, and he was laughing and he says, let's do it. So I said, yes, I have an amazing sketch that I've been thinking about. How could a car of the future look like? But then we took the project a step further. We started to think about what do young people truly want of a car in the future? People who live in Paris and London and Los Angeles. So we start creating these user scenarios, and then we start solving the problems of these different user scenarios, and then we start creating the car that way. So it became a totally new product. I call it almost like a mobility device. It's about 4.5 meters long. It doesn't look like anything else. It's super cool, maybe a little weird, very futuristic. Same with the interior. We thought about what is it people bring with them, their phones, their iPads, whatever. Where do you put all this stuff? How do you do your daily living? So the vehicle really kind of emerged to become this really unique vehicle that we just finished the concept phase. We are now in production engineering. We will have some prototypes end of this year. We probably won't show the design until end of next year. And Foxconn is our partner for manufacturing. They have a big factory in Ohio in the US. And also we will use some of Foxconn's supply chain as well, because it's almost like a computer on wheels, and Foxconn is the biggest manufacturer of tech parts. So I think for charging, if you think about gasoline cars, there's no car company who owns gasoline stations and say, hey, this is my gasoline station. You can only come in here if you drive my brand. I think that's the wrong thing. I think it would annoy the consumer, and I think we need to make it easy for the consumer to use electric cars. So we've already decided we all have one plug, the CCS plug. The only one that doesn't have that plug is Tesla, but I think they'll turn around and probably get that plug as well. Then I think really the governments around the globe has to push to get more charging infrastructure in all the right places. Then I think we need all the charging groups to make sure that they are fully connected and provide data to all the car companies, so we can all put the charging stations in our screens so we can see where they are. And then we need to have an easy plug and charge where you just go, charge your car, you get billed to your credit card. You don't need to take out a card, swipe or something like that. It should be simple. And I think even we should think about potentially being able to book time at a charging station, and you can calculate out with a navigation system when you're going to be there. And of course, if you're not there, you lose your place. I think what's important is we also put these charging stations not like in supermarkets where people spend 2 hours because now you're blocking, but rather like with gas stations where you have them near the highway, and where you go in and you maybe spend 15-20 minutes and then you leave again. So there's always a turnover, and people always have a place to charge the car. And of course, we're all working to get the charging time down. I think already with the Pear and even with the Ocean, I think 5-minute charge should give you close to 100 kilometers, which means you can go in and do a quick charge and then keep going. I know that there's already solar panels up on the space station that's 2.5 times as powerful as what we have on the Ocean, and the Ocean has the best. They're very expensive, too expensive yet, but let's say we get there. 2.5 times more than 2,000 to 3,000. That's quite a lot of energy. Now you're looking at 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers a year, and I think that could be a real factor where you maybe be able to go down and get your baguette down to the bakery and driving 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers, and then going back home, and it was all solar energy. Well, I think the perfect car of the future is the Fisker Ocean. But if you think about really far out, I think that electrification and electric vehicles are here to stay for quite a long time. The car industry invests billions of dollars in development, so they're not ready to change every 10 years to a whole new technology. What I think is going to happen over the next 20 years is we're going to get improving in the battery technology to the point where I don't think we're going to think much about it. I think maybe we can start getting standardization on at least the battery modules. So everybody uses the same module, maybe different battery sizes, but at least the same modules. So it's going to be easier to switch, lower cost, mass production. So my answer to people who said they can't afford an electric car right now will come in 2024, and this is the Project Pear. We will sell it for under $30,000 or 30,000 euro. And we also have a flexible lease, which will allow you to get, same with the Ocean, we actually have a flexible lease that will allow you to lease it, and you can drop the lease anytime you want. You give the car back anytime you want. There's no commitment to long term. So I think we find new mobility solutions We are doing it as a company because we don't have the big overhead. We don't have multiple factories we have to pay for. We don't have tens of thousands of people who sits, you know, and maintains all these factories and all these buildings. If you have all these people, you have to pay for them somehow. We are super lean. We want to give as much value to the customer. And I definitely think we need more affordable electric cars that are fun to drive, that does what the consumer wants, whether it's the range, the technology, the design.